Good morning. So it's day one of me being a non-smoker. I just wanted to report on how I'm feeling. It's definitely much different than the last time I attempted it properly. I didn't sleep very well, very unrestful, and it had something to do with the realization that I wasn't gonna smoke a cigarette anymore in my life, and it was really weird to see that process going on. So the anxiety would, and the realization would be powerful enough for me to wake up and be unrestful. So this morning I did wake up on a proper timing, didn't smoke a cigarette or anything, but at the moment and in the past hour, I have been experiencing a lot of fantasies leading to me finding ways to smoke, and maybe even giving up on myself in the idea and commitment of quitting. So I guess it's more mental with me than physical in my cravings. And yeah, I feel strong enough to deal with it. That's not really the case. I'm just trying to sketch out how I'm annoying or being unrelaxed. Next to that, I sort of have a pain right under here in this section, like where my rib cage starts basically. It's more of a pressure thingy. So it's around about 3 hours later. Been having breakfast and mainly working in the garden, finishing up a chore for money that I eventually needed my dad's help with. I should have recorded what I actually did. Could prove that I did so. It definitely helped in getting my mind off of it, but the only thing I notice is that as soon as I finish, that reflex of a reward or the automatic assumption or habit to reward myself with a cigarette comes in. I noticed that there's a serious amount of aggression, irritation, irritability, I guess, in me, which makes me rather impulsive. All my family members know that I'm going through this process, but luckily I've been able to control it fairly well, but the internalization of that aggression and irritation doesn't make it disappear. It's just an alternative way of dealing with it. And next to that, I am very aware of the fact that the mental aspect has definitely become more relevant this attempt of quitting, or this time I become a non-smoker. They call it in the book, they call it the little nicotine monster. It is definitely making sound, and he's calling for a nicotine hit. So I just need to continue on and be strong. I want to be healthy, and I want to win this game against my own addiction. So I'll get back to you on that one. I wanted to report on the progress. It's now 20 past 6, which means that some hours, 6 hours have passed. And yeah, I'm very proud about myself and how I've been worked in the garden mostly to keep myself physically occupied, so mentally it wouldn't take over, and the impulsive, intrusive thinking wouldn't take over to possibly seduce myself to making the mistake of smoking another cigarette. For some reason this morning I had a lot of difficulty with it. It started off with me being in bed and waking up a couple of times, almost having to realize that today was the day that I was going to stop. And after that, I basically woke up and started in my rhythm, drinking coffee, which is, by the way, a trigger of me wanting to smoke. And it took a long time for me actually to set myself to action. And well, as soon as I did so, it really helped me. I was very easily irritatable when I wasn't actually working outside, in the garden. But those phases were really cut short because of the amount of time that I actually worked. And it wouldn't really have to matter how you work. I believe that I would spend some time up here in my room writing, not about how to stop with smoking, but other things, meaningful things having to do with this YouTube channel. One of the most triggering things was that I was really skeptical or critical of how I recorded or documented my progress in this process of becoming a non-smoker, or being a non-smoker. And I was just thinking about the amount of value that I could give to someone that is considering doing the same. And I really became critical of how I spoken, and that it should be more structured, my speech, and that I should be explaining my tactics better, and that my first attempt was a lot better overall, guaranteeing a higher chance of success. But I'm not sure if that's really correct. There's a lot that I haven't talked about yet, which I'm gonna do now. But yeah, my progress has been cluttered. That is how I would describe this morning. A lot of thinking, creative thinking, but not productive at all. It was just very busy, making mistakes, stupid mistakes that are based on a lack of concentration, and that only increased irritability. So that in turn is a downward spiral, right? Because you start thinking, there is less paying attention, you make more mistakes, become more irritable, and think more therefore. So, well, anyways, there are a few things that are important to mention. One, leading up to today, I didn't cut down on my cigarettes. It's something that the book states, but next to that, I've seen a study or read a study where they tested the statistical values of people that stopped cold turkey and that cut down. And over a period of 3 years, the people who went cold turkey had a higher percentage of staying a non-smoker. Next to that, I try not to get involved in any triggers at the moment. So I'm not drinking tonight or the coming few days. The reason of that is basically, I know my best friend, he tried stopping with smoking, and on the second day he drank, and it really had a bad effect on him. Not that he relapsed, but he's shaking in his bed like an idiot, wanting a cigarette. And it's just bad. I can't imagine how awful that feeling is. So I want to prevent that from happening. Next to that, coffee in the morning is definitely a trigger. I feel it even has more to do with the nicotine, so wanting to stay busy, being a little bit more hyper, than coffee itself. So today except for the first coffee, I drank decaf and only 3 cups, which is quite a lot. But I focus on not exposing myself towards these triggers. And these triggers are usually associations in when you smoke. So when paying attention to that, for example, when you study and take breaks or read and take breaks, I can imagine that that would trigger a craving for a cigarette. Try to mind that and safeguard yourself. That, at least, I've seen to be very useful. Because you understand the process, that there is a process, and therefore triggering this whole state of wanting a cigarette. And that might help you to eliminate that state and basically get rid of that. Then lastly, just thought of it. Sorry. I got it again. Take some time. With your commitment to stopping with smoking, and that's sort of what I don't like about the book. It states that you should have an easy time with quitting with smoking if you're completely convinced that you want to stop and are convinced that you can stop, which I like by itself, but by default, I feel like you start second guessing yourself, which the book states that you shouldn't do, when cravings come up. And you feel maybe it's a paradox. Because I read that in the book, I started second guessing my intentions and my motivation towards quitting. But I feel like a lack of control is something in thought, and maybe even relapsing, is something you should accept about yourself in your process of quitting or becoming a non-smoker. Since there is a automatic process that takes place because you're an addict. It's a dependency, after all. And I believe that the addiction will influence your thought and maybe even your emotions, like I've been talking about irritability. And therefore, you basically increase the chance of relapsing. That's why these 3 days or 5 days or 3 weeks are considered to be so important, because they gradually come a lot more easy. Anyways, so you need to accept that there is a lot in the first 3 days that you won't be able to control, but that would be the initial reaction, so the impulsivity, only the reaction that you have towards that impulsivity, the reflective side of the impulse, is that which you should focus on in trying to regulate and find more control in that automatism. So I might be wrong on that one, but that has helped me at least.